It's time for the chip race.
For strategy this week, we are joined by EPT Berlin and DSPT Calgary champion, our good friend Ben Wilinofsky. Ben, welcome back to the show.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Do this hand of ours. It is a throwback to your famous EPT Berlin win in 2011. Probably the most famous hand of your career, in fact, Ben. It got a lot of YouTube love over the years.
I think it's the most famous hand of Joep and Bijgaart's career. I'm kind of incidental.
Yes, well, that's true. Yeah, yes, maybe you are incidental in this. There are 17 left in a field of 773 players. You are the tournament chip leader. The blinds are 15k, 30k, with an old-fashioned 3k ante that everyone had to put in each. Action folds around to Jeffrey Hakim in the cutoff, who raises to 65k with the Queen Jack of clubs. He's playing 2.1 million roughly. I had to eyeball this. You look down at the Ace of Diamonds, Ace of Spades on the button, and you elected to flat. Sneaky. The small blind folds, and Joep van den Bijgaart in the big blind flicks in the call with the Ace 9 of hearts. He's playing 1.506 million. Ben, you had been stomping everyone, so a button raise here would have gotten very little credit. So why the flat?
There were two things that went into this decision that were adjustments. One is the opener's Jeffrey Hakim. This is a bit of my ancient poker knowledge, but 2011 Jeffrey Hakim was not the type to put in a light 4-bet or, get frustrated and get over it or take a kind of stand with 17 left in an EPT. So as much as I felt that my image was conducive to it, I just didn't really believe in Jeff pulling a trigger at that spot, at that time in that tournament. The other thing is that the small blind, who we kind of glossed over here, is a quite aggressive Lithuanian. His day was going badly. This is Christianis Andrulis, who has Gravis 1 online, very high-stakes PLO player. He was a Lithuanian kid who came in with a bunch of chips, had been on my left all day, and had bled chips down to 20 big blinds. So he was set up very nicely for a squeeze.
Fair enough. That's a pretty good answer. Dara, bearing in mind the ICM pressure that Ben can exert on everyone, how are you constructing a flatting range, and does it include aces?
Yeah, absolutely it does. This is a very interesting spot for me because normally I'm a bit hesitant of applying sort of what we know from solvers now back to hands of this vintage. It seems kind of unfair, but actually this is really good. This is very much solver approved even in the current paradigm. I did put this into Monker with ICM turned on, and basically the reason why we're flatting aces here is if we 3-bet, the opener is actually supposed to fold much more than normal, probably about 65% of his range. And additionally, obviously, aces blocks his continuous very heavily. So with aces, we get far more folds. But maybe the crucial point is we want to be able to flat a very wide range here because we can also apply ICM pressure post-flop, which is going to be insanely profitable for us. Therefore, we need to protect our speculative flats with at least one super strong hand here to avoid squeezes, etc. And aces is the perfect candidate. So I think a good way to construct our range here is to flat aces, the weaker suited aces, ace jack suited and down, say, fair smattering of suited kings, king queen to king 9 suited queens, jacks and other suited connectors, some low pairs, and pretty wide range. And then our 3-bet range is going to be good pairs that unblock his get-ins. 10s through kings, for example, make better 3-bets than aces. And our 3-bet folds would be stuff like ace 2 suited and other aces that aren't really strong enough to just flat, and someone suited broadways like king jack, queen jack, those types of hands. So I think that's a good way to construct the range here.
Very good. Well, to the flop, the pot is 228k and the flop comes a very favourable to all ace of clubs, 2 of clubs, 9 of spades. Den Bijgaart checks, Hakim c-bets his flush draw, 93k. You click it to 193k, Ben. Den Bijgaart then raises his top 2 pair to 530k. 36% of his remaining stack. Hakim folds, and action back on you. You decide to put him all in for 911k more. There's a lot to unpack here. So let's start with the Hakim c-bet and your decision to raise really small. Dara, I'll start with you this time. This specific board texture, ace XX disconnected with 2 of 1 suit, is interesting. At first, somebody might think, oh, I have the deck crippled, I better just flat. But in reality, that ace is going nowhere. Our opponent might have the case ace, and there's no harm charging the draw. Is that a good way to look at it?
Yeah, I think it is. I mean, like sometimes people think I have the deck crippled and that sort of is the end of their discussion. But like, if he has nothing, we're probably not going to get anything from him anyway on a later street. So we might as well just target ace X's. I also think there's a stronger case for raising here than calling because it's multi-way and therefore there's a better chance, obviously, that somebody has something which can pay us off. But also there are no good turns really for us. So we might as well get the money in now as much as we can before maybe a bad turn rolls off. We basically want to get the better in the hands now, and we want to be able to raise draws and throw in a lot of bluffs, because I mentioned in pre-flop that we can flat pretty wide in this spot, and that's because we get to bluff a lot. So this is a spot where we would be bluffing a lot, so we might as well go ahead and bet our value.
Nice. I like the logic of that. Ben, did you choose the clicky sizing for sort of maximum goading, given how your opponents were probably sick of your shit at this point and you could get them to commit a lot maybe with top pair or perhaps even induce a move?
I didn't really expect to induce a move. Joep is kind of handcuffed. And again, as I described, Jeffrey Hakim, I was not expecting a lot of moves out of him at this point in the tournament with the way stacks were lined up. More, I wanted to choose a small sizing here because it was reflective of what Dara said, that we occasionally get to have pure bluffs here. So I wanted to choose a smallish sizing that would impress upon my opponents that I had some pure bluffs here. There was an excellent point that he made, which is that even though we have the deck crippled, we have to think about how we're going to get more chips in this pot. And the answer is, although we block our ace high hands, if I call here and Jeff has an ace, very often he's going to start maybe playing it passively, giving me room to bluff, or he might even find some hero folds on the river on certain runouts. But I think choosing at bluffy sizing, also a sizing where I might choose a small sizing with a flush draw in order to check back turn, in order to get a cheap price on two cards. I think it makes it harder for Jeff to get away from his ace X hands when I don't have very many good one pair hands that want to raise here. Solvers might encourage you to raise like ace 10, ace jack type of stuff here, just the best aces that you flat with. But at the time, the thinking on these boards was that you would not be raising your medium strength one pair hands for value when your opponent had all the ace queen and ace king and you didn't.
Well, enter Ben Bijgaart, who has been absolutely cold decked, it's got to be said. He doesn't just have the case ace, he actually has the 9 as well. He makes it 530k, a nice size actually, setting up a turn shove. You decide to shove. Ben, I know you have given this one some thought down the years, but I like your decision to shove. I mean, what the fuck is he going to do here? Like, put in 530k and fold?
That was exactly the only thought going through my head. I thought that he would have pure bluffs that would give up, and not very often, and I thought he would have hands he was committed with. I didn't really conceptualize or think at the time of a 36% of your stack decide range in the big blind here. And so when he started tanking, I don't know if you've watched the video clip again, but you can see on my face, I kind of am working out what's going on in real time because I really did not do a good job of processing beforehand. I just figured, oh, he has a hand he's committed with, or he has a hand he's not going to put another chip in the pot with. This was a rookie mistake on my part. And then you got me talking and figured out that I was strong, and at the end of the hand he makes a really incredible fold, and it took me a lot of time to figure out exactly how good his play was here, because at the time I just didn't have the framework for making a decision like this.
Ben has maybe sort of pieced it together for my next question in a way, Dara, because I wanted to come to you and say, look, obviously by the maths, it's going to be really hard to find any justification for this fold by Ben Bijgaart, but maybe it was all down to physical read, and obviously we both watched this tape before chatting to Ben today. What did you make from it, Dara?
Yeah, I mean, there's no way you can justify this fold on any mathematical grounds. I mean, he literally has one of the strongest hands he can have, blocking the two strongest hands that Ben can have. It's a drawy board, etc. So normally there's no justification here, but I mean, it's live, so you can always go for a read. Ben, as you said, was very inexperienced live at the time. Having watched the footage, Ben's only question while he was considering what to do after the check raise was, how much do you have? Now, a lot of times weak live players interpret that as you're trying to push them off, but strong players know that it's a stack related question, and having got the answer, he would know that Ben doesn't expect him to ever fold. So That's sort of factor number one. Factor number two then is the speech play that happens during the tank. And I watched the Poker Guys video on this, and they made quite a big deal of this, saying that Ben's speech play was indicative of strength. And I would tend to agree with that. So I'd give the opponent credit here and say that when he check raised, he thought he was getting it in, but he gave himself time to decide and just decided for whatever reason, for something he said, that he had to have it here. And I mean, it is a incomprehensible fold from a game theory perspective, but this is an instance of one deep in an EPT. So it's important to give yourself at least the chance to consider folding.
Well, Ben, I met you for the first time, I want to say a couple of months after this result. I remember very fondly a night in Dublin on the town. And I didn't know you before then, but anytime I came across you on the felt or elsewhere, I always thought of you as a bit of a master of the sussing out situations live. So I wonder, looking back on that video, do you feel like you sort of gave it away? Or do you look back and go, well, you just have to take your hat off to how he broke it down? How do you see it now?
Oh, I definitely feel like I gave it away. I just need to shut the fuck up quite badly. But I think it's something that I chalked up at the time to inexperience. And it's a lot easier to deal with when you win the tournament anyways. I think if I had finished sixth or something and Joep had got on to win, I would have tortured myself about this hand forever. But yeah, I do feel like I gave it away. And I do feel like it's something that, with the benefit of experience, I've gotten much better at in live situations. And I'm more attentive and also more controlled in live situations now than I was at the time. You got to remember as well, at the time I had some undiagnosed depression and anxiety issues that certainly the high stress of this situation probably bubbled up to the forefront. I think, you know, a lot of my chattiness at the table was kind of not in my control. It was these pressures from within me pushing up. And so I have a better understanding of those as well. Since then, all of the things that I described that I do better now than I did then, they also take an energetic toll on me. And I found live poker to be a lot more exhausting than it used to be when I have to be attentive to all these other factors from myself and from everyone at the table.
That's an absolutely fascinating breakdown. I didn't expect to get it from quite so many angles, and that depth into sort of your personal situation as well and how that was a factor. But that's really engrossing. Darragh, what did you make of Ben's 10 years later breakdown?
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think it's incredible. It also obviously shows amazing self-awareness. And also I would credit Ben for reflecting inwards rather than outwards when something like this happens. A lot of players, and I'm sure you know them too, David, if this happened, they would just go, the guy made a terrible fold, and that will be the end of their considerations. But it's important to give credit to opponents. And, you know, if a very good player does a very unexpected play, rather than thinking, oh, they've done something horrible for once, we should at least consider the possibility that they've found something.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Ben, it has been great fun going back in time with you today. The best of luck with the rake. It is easily one of my top 6 favourite poker podcasts. Please send our regards to Jamie. Ben Wilinofsky, thank you.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Thanks, Ben.